Welcome to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. One of the real delights in this is getting to know some people and read in the author game, and we are very pleased to welcome back one of our favorite people, who is back for his three-peat. We first interviewed Dennis. Would be in the debut novel Love, Pride, and Murder, January last year. Followed that in August to talk about Of Towers and Shadows, both featuring his detective T.B. Stone. He's a very different character, and as a result, the books are neither hard-boiled noir, no cozy mystery, but what I would like to call a Goldilocks just right blend of the two. Now, that's not surprising when you have an author with his own blended background, which includes a master's in theology, experience actually in the book manufacturing business, and as a motorcycle rider and sports car driver. We're very pleased to welcome back Dennis Feece.
Thank you, Roger. How you doing?
I'm doing well. This is the third time out for T.B. Stone. It feels like his character's being fleshed out with more detail. We're getting more and more of his background. So the question is it easier to write about him the more you know about his background, or harder to find things to add?
Well, I think it's easier, and if you think about getting to know somebody over the course of a couple of years, um, I think it follows that kind of path. You get to know TB because he encounters different situations, he meets different people, he has challenges that he has to overcome with the help of others, and it's very much like dealing with somebody that you meet as a friend. So
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say that it's a process that we all are familiar with.
Mm-hmm. And I have to, I think I mentioned it before in a previous interview. Yeah. But one of the reasons I enjoy these books is because the characters, other than the bad guys, of course, are not only pleasant, they're comfortable. And I've said before, I'd be happy to share a glass of Syrah with them or one of the tasty meals you're very good at describing. And for me, I just want to note the only other series characters that give that same good people vibe to me are those in the Three Pines community of Chief Inspector Armand Gamache in the series by Louise Penny. And for
Yeah,
some reason, I get that same, oh man, let's go grab a cup of coffee and just chat kind of thing. So that's high praise, but it's highly deserved, I think.
it's very high praise, and I could only hope to reach that level of perfection because she really is a great writer. And the Gamache series, and I think they're making movies out of it now too, or
Oh,
at least television movies.
I've got to
It's
see that.
which takes it even higher in terms
Yeah.
of attention from the public. Yeah, those are great characters.
Well,
So I
interesting.
agree. Now, if my characters are close to that, then not only is that a compliment, but it's also what I've been trying to do. Not to necessarily match what she was doing with her characters, but just to make them, as you put it, comfortable. So you feel like you know them, and you feel like you're invested in them, and you actually have some sense that what they're going through is kind of what you would be going through in the same situation.
Exactly. I did have a chance to have a short interview with Louise Penny, and I told her that I would move to Three Pines tomorrow if I could. And she said, "But what about Ruth?" I said, the Ruth Zardo, the crazy lady poet. I said, "She's the mustard in the sandwich. She is the spark in the life," and she liked that a lot. So anyway, that's one of my pride moments in talking to her about that. Well, getting back to you, since I wandered away a little bit, one of the things I want to talk about is the structure of this book here, which is really a bit different. Um, in most detective stories, as the investigation proceeds, the clues are followed, the facts are assembled, the truth is revealed layer by layer until a mystery is solved. But in the Phantom Grasp, investigation is piled on investigation, further complicating the whole situation before things start to resolve. And I suspect that was very intentional.
Yes, it was intentionally. It's an approach that follows the overall theme of the T.B. Stone mysteries. I think you and I have talked about this before in other interviews. The starting point for the first one was a passage in Genesis. The starting point for the second one was another passage in Genesis, and the third one is what I like to think of as sort of a culmination of what Genesis is all about as a book.
Ah,
And so if you think about Jacob's story and what Jacob had to deal with in order to get from point A to point B, a lot of confusion, a lot of discord, a lot of enemies along the way, friends that became enemies, enemies that became friends, all of that, marrying, divorcing, having, just a really, really complicated time of it. And I'm not saying that this TB Stone mystery is that. I'm saying that process is very similar, and that's the reason for it. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And for some reason, you send my mind into parenthetic thoughts, and I'm just thinking one of my favorite songs is Jacob's Ladder by Huey Lewis in the News every day, rung by rung, trying to get it better than tomorrow. Yeah, get tomorrow better than today. So, anyway, thank you for kicking that thought in my mind. A lot to talk about today in this three-peat experience. One of the things I wanted to talk about is some of the details on here. You have a couple of really nice little passages of humor in it. And I want to read one of them that really intrigued me. It said, "The pastries were very nice. I had two. Luce had none. She gave me a look when I reached for the second one, but through sign language, I indicated I was eating her share to be polite. I've always been a giving person that sort of way." I chuckled over that one. I think a lot of readers will too as well. That's a personality right there in a couple of sentences.
Yeah, actually, it's personality of both of them.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's yeah.
and the relationship that they have, the kind of
Hmm.
relationship that they have. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was the idea. But yeah, I try to leaven the writing with humor,
Hmm.
and that's and nothing heavy-handed. Yeah,
Hmm.
I've never been a slapstick kind of a guy. It's more of I'm not Monty. I am a Monty Python person. I'm not a what's his name, the slapstick guy from England of that era, Benny
Um,
Hill.
oh, Benny Hill,
I'm not a
yes. Oh, now I've got
I'm
Yakety Sax playing in my head. Thank you for that. Which is the theme
I'm
song for
sorry.
Benny Hill. That's all right. Um, but and here's the thing, you got a good grasp of real person dialogue. I don't ever get the feel like, hey, look at me, I'm a literary author. This is me being clever with my writing. I know it's transparent prose in the best possible senses. This is what real people say in real situations. So I don't know how
Right.
you come up with that. That's a lot of hard work, but you make it seem effortless.
Well, influences, lifelong influences, and I'm still reading through and rereading through a lot of his writing. I'm sure you're familiar with Ernest Hemingway,
Oh
and
yeah.
he was he took he was a complicated guy. I mean, in real life,
Hmm.
but his prose was, I guess,
Hmm.
sparingly written, and yet, what did he call his iceberg way of writing? I think was
Hmm.
the way he described
Yeah.
it. The surface seemed to be very, very simple and very understandable and all the rest of it. But at the end of a sentence, the end of a paragraph, at the end of a chapter, there was more to it than that. And that is what I've always tried to do with anything that I write. I want it to be accessible, and you can't you can't create something that is dense and expect it to be accessible to everyone. And
Hmm.
that's and Hemingway's writing was accessible to anyone who wanted to pick it up and read it. And there are people that could read it and enjoy it on one level, people that could read it and enjoy
Hmm.
it on another level. And I think that he writes for a lifetime of enjoyment, at least for me.
Hmm.
And so, not that I'm comparing my writing to Hemingway's. All I'm saying is that it can be done in such a way that you can achieve both. You can write simply without being pretentious,
Hmm.
and you can write in such a way that there are levels to it, and it's enjoyable on a whole different level.
And as
So
time goes by and your experience changed and you get further understanding and you go back and reread it again and you have a different interpretation or see not so much different as additional depth to it. So
yeah, addition. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's right.
that's cool.
Right.
Again, you're very good at what I call the telling detail. And I have some examples of that I like to share with you and the audience. Um, for instance, he said, just one sentence, just kind of my bias was toward the efficiency benefits, while Luce tended toward the values associated with cleanliness. Again, relationship, two different things in one sentence. So, yeah, again, I'm admiring that all the way through. Again, I take lots of notes, as you've noticed, when I read, because I go, ooh, that's good. And then I put it away, and then we have to talk to the author about it. Another one, I'm Irish enough to be skeptical of random emotions and German enough to find said emotions best understood as necessary evils. That's those are interesting, almost philosophical things. Pardon
Or
me.
ethnical things. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's ethical and ethnical.
yeah.
The that comes out of my head. I mean, that's the way I am. I'm
Hmm.
very much that way. I've got I've got both strains running through my personality, I think. And yeah, you're dealing with stereotypes anytime you talk about ethnicity,
Yeah,
but still, if you stand back far enough and look, you can see patterns, and
yeah,
patterns are, what makes it easier to navigate through life anyway. So
yeah,
why not use them? And in the novel, people can relate to that, and there's a little humor in that as well. I mean,
yeah,
that was an idea as well,
yeah.
sort of poking fun at myself while poking fun at TB to some extent.
It's always a mistake I've learned over the years to attribute the thoughts and feelings and attitudes of the character to the author. But there was one
Yeah.
thing that I wanted to read you that seemed maybe a little, well, let me get this to you. He said, when we were first married and we were together 24 hours a day, I realized that her emotional insulation was like silk covering high voltage wiring. And honestly, it was overwhelming. But after a while, I recognized it was every bit as exciting as it was scary. So now I relax and enjoy the polarity of it. This has the ring of authenticity. So I have to ask, did this reference something that happened to you?
Well, that's a tricky question.
Oh, it's
it,
positive. I'm.
no, I understand that. I'm not criticizing. It's tricky for me to answer. That's what I meant.
Ah,
Um, yes and no.
mm,
Yeah, there was someone I was thinking about when I wrote that passage.
okay.
Okay. And
That's.
I wanted to write it in such a way that there was a little bit of obfuscation in it,
Hmm.
if that makes any sense.
Yes.
And I don't, I rarely, very, very rarely, when I'm writing anything, not that I have written mounds of material, but uh, I don't target any particular person. I'm not describing anyone that I know.
Hmm.
Everything that the characters that I develop come out of my imagination, and I suppose somewhere back there in my history, I knew somebody that was like that. I go for traits. I
Hmm.
come up with a character that I want in a particular place, and then I look at a group of traits that would fit that place and be interesting to see navigate through that place.
Hmm.
That's how I come up with the characters in short. And
Hmm.
with Lucia, uh, Lucia has been developing at the same time as TB because she was introduced in the very first
Hmm.
part of the novel, and they were together from that point forward. And so
Yeah.
their relationship has matured throughout the three novels, and it's gotten to the point. But if you're in a relationship with somebody that is um, someone that you don't get, I have to be careful how I say this. You don't want to get tired of people,
Uh,
especially if you're married to someone. You don't. That's the
hmm.
last thing that you want.
Yeah.
Um, and if you can find someone that is always sort of challenging, always has something to offer, something different. And when TB describes Lucia, he's describing exactly that kind of person. He's not just allured by her, he is mystified by her, and it's all kind of blended together. And for him, you can tell by the way he describes her and the way he understands her that that's something that's rare for him. Okay.
Hmm.
So I guess you're probably right. There's a little bit of me in that, um, through TB's eyes, I suppose. And there's a little bit of one particular person that I knew years ago that applies to.
Hmm.
But Lucia is a whole lot more than one single individual, and TB is a whole lot more than I
Yeah.
am. That's for sure.
All right. I notice little bits and things sometimes because I read so much. And you
Yeah.
have a sneaky way of working in references to jazz musicians during this
Oh, yeah.
book. I mean, right early on, I think it's practically the first few pages, you mentioned Sketches of Spain. And I said, wait a minute, that's Miles Davis's album. But you don't put Miles Davis in. You make go, what's that? And people will look it up and then find out it's Miles Davis. Excuse me. And then you actually named a character, Charlie Parker. We're talking Charlie Bird Parker, the sax expert,
Or,
and then finally, it's like you escalate this. You don't mention the name, then you take the name and give a character that, and then later you openly reference Billie Holiday as herself. So I was watching this evolution as a minor through line through the plot.
yeah, that's it's interesting that you mentioned that because I love jazz
Yeah.
and always have from the time I was in high school a long time ago. just last night I was watching old Dizzy Gillespie. Um, YouTube, well, they weren't done on YouTube at the time, but they're on
Yeah,
YouTube now, and you can
yeah,
watch him playing live with his orchestra or small quintet, I think it was.
yeah.
Wonderful musician. And then, curiously enough, last night I also listened to. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I listened to part of Sketches of Spain, which I think I think when he first Miles Davis first released that, it got a lot of negative criticism,
Mm-hmm.
and I never quite understand why. I thought it was brilliant. I mean,
Uh,
it wasn't like what he had done before, but you know, if you think about it as I'm giving you a comparison that I'm sure you
yeah.
can relate to, when when Bob Dylan went to the Newport Music Festival
Mm-hmm.
and he played the first set acoustically, all of the people in the audience who were folk people thought it was brilliant. They loved it. Then he comes out and everything is plugged in. And he starts playing rock.
Yeah.
Well, he got so much negativity. They were booing him. They were throwing things at him. This is the same musician.
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of understand when people are on a journey, musically especially, there are going to be changes that aren't going to be exactly what you're accustomed to. You have
Yeah.
to try to understand it and then patiently wait until it sort of makes sense. All those people that thought that Sketches of Spain back then was some kind of aberration, I'm sure if they're still alive today would look at it and think, "My God, how did that man do that?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that's the way it is.
Well, it was kind of a start of a change, and we have this expectation. When if we haven't seen somebody for a long time, we're startled by the change because we have this mental picture of them. If we have a particular fan of a musician or an author, and we are expecting more of the same but slightly different. And if you go radically different, then that can be upsetting for a while, but also is how artists grow, as far as I'm
Right.
concerned. Yeah. So,
That's true.
so what do you think is your biggest growth since the first book? What's the thing that you think you're most proud of?
That's one of the reasons I like interviewing with you because you ask questions that no one else has asked, and it makes you can't. I don't. I don't usually prepare for these things, at least not in depth. But I never would have anticipated that question. Now let me think about that for a minute. Uh, well, I think probably the maturity of the characters in the beginning. Maybe think about how you do anything. If the first time, are you a carpenter at all, or do you have anything that you
I
anything you
spent a couple of years building fences for people. Yes,
okay?
that's my
Well, when you
limit. Yeah.
well, but yeah, but that fits. In the very beginning, you were trying to figure out exactly how to do it,
Mm.
and so you knew that you had a certain length of field that you were, or yard, whatever it was you were doing, and you had to have a certain amount of wood to do it, and the if you're building a fence with I don't know what kind of fences you built, but
All
it doesn't
kinds.
doesn't really matter. You
Yeah,
had
yeah,
all and whatever the theme was, a particular kind of fence, you had to have all of the tools that were necessary. So you knew what you needed to start. You didn't really know what you were going to get into until you got into that first fence,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
And you sort of learned as you were going when you built the fence. When you got finished with that fence, then somebody else calls up and says, "Yo, Roger, we'd like for you to do a fence. We saw your product and we liked it, and so we'd like to have you do one for us. Except this is what I'd like for you to do differently." And you say,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, okay." So you come right back at it, and this time you come back with a little more confidence and more knowledge, certainly, and it goes more quickly. And you create this fence that's a lot more elaborate than it was before, but it takes you less time to do it
Yeah.
because you've learned along and you kind of know what you're doing. When the third fence comes along, or multiple fences after that, it's almost routine. And so the parts that you're focusing on are not the main parts of the fence because that's you know how to do that and you do that fairly quickly. But now it's the finishing that you're concerned about. The way it's painted, the way it's trimmed, how level it is in the yard, all of the things that are sort of extras that a lot of people don't even, never get to really. And so think about that as an analogy of as how I wrote the book. I started out with knowing from all the people that I've read over the years what good writing is like. I also knew what bad writing was like. And as a beginner, I tried to go more towards the good than the bad, good. And then, but I stumbled along the way, and there were certain
Mhm.
things that when I read the first novel, there are things that I wish I had done differently. Second novel comes along, and that one now I know how to do it. I feel comfortable with the process, and now I'm looking at uh, creating something that's has a little more. Oh, it's starchier. I know, for want of a better word. It's something that
Ah,
it, it's no more plot driven, and it has a lot of different elements that weren't included in the first novel. And
yeah.
the first novel, to be fair to myself, the first novel was really about developing the characters,
Hmm.
and the second novel is putting the characters into situations that revealed. I think you said this to me one time, that revealed them more completely, and
Yes.
that happened in the second novel. And then picking up from where the second novel ended with the third novel, now I had already gone through both of those changes in writing, and now I was looking at a way to sort of complete the three of them as a trilogy. And so the sense of it was, how do I make this fit my initial idea about the novel, which came from, uh, and I'm disclosing it now. No, do I want to do that or not? No, I'm not going to disclose it just yet. Maybe later. Um, how do I do that? How do I arrive at that conclusion for the novel and do it in a really organic kind of way? So it's not. It doesn't seem like that's what I'm doing. It just is a natural way of it happening. And I think I did that. I don't know. I haven't got too many reviews yet, so
Uh,
I don't really have any confirmation of that. But that's what I was trying to do anyway.
yeah.
Um, and so I guess that's a really long-winded way of answering the question. But I think that just having that sense of what I was doing that was really in its infancy in the first novel, and
Hmm.
so there was a. It's more like it's more like learning the craft, if that makes sense.
It does. Yep. Well, good. This is why I ask some of those questions. I get some of the best answers. That was a totally unscripted. I have a bunch of scripted questions here, but that was totally unscripted. When you go down the rabbit trail that somebody leads you to, you get some really interesting things. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll go back to the scripted and see what else we can find here. Let's see, where was I going to go next on this? Oh, yeah, I have to ask about this because I'm of a certain age. I don't think you're as certain of an age as I am, but you actually reference Soupy Sales in here, and that's child of the late 50s, early 60s in that case.
Yeah, Soupy Sales. I loved Soupy Sales when I was a kid. I was a
Mm-hmm.
kid, I was an
Mm-hmm.
adult, but yeah, he had it, and his sense of humor was ironic. It was all those characters that he had, all the double entendres, all the stuff that kids aren't supposed to know anything about. But for some reason, my head didn't work the way other kids did, at least not with regard to Soupy Sales. I love Soupy Sales, and
Uh,
when the guy, I think he got into trouble with the networks back then a couple of times,
yeah.
stuff that he did. But yeah, he was very, very funny. And the thing that if there was one word that I could use to describe Soupy Sales, it would be irreverent.
Oh,
And so
yes.
I was going for that. That's why I said Soupy Sales. It might work, but
Yeah.
not for something else.
I don't know if the tale's apocryphal or not, but it's been around for years and years. And that is that at one point he told kids, go get your dad's wallet, take those funny little pictures of the green stuff in it, put it in an envelope, and give it to this address. And said apparently some of the kids did that. And he got in big trouble for that one. And there was another time he thought the mic was not on, and he said a few things that would not be, the
Yeah,
FCC
that
would
one
not be happy
I
about.
know
Yeah,
that one's true. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
because a lot of
interesting.
things were live back then. I mean, it's
Oh,
a more
yeah.
innocent time.
You think how interesting are, this is again building philosophical, and our lifespans, roughly the same. The changes in when I was a kid in the 50s, the people who were doing the television show would break the character to do the commercial and then go back to or they write it in, and that started in radio. But
Yeah, yeah.
so many changes over the years. Yeah,
Well, they didn't know what to do with pictures. I mean, it was
yeah,
all the people that started out in early television were from radio, and
yeah,
so that's all they knew how to do.
yeah.
And then as time passed, they got newer people with newer ideas, and
Hmm.
instead of having talking heads, they had situational kinds of things, and
Yeah.
then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And today, it, I think those people back then would never even understand what we were doing with television.
No, absolutely not. Um, One of the things that I like to put as a category as I go through here is what I call good writing, which I mentioned that thing about being first married and whatnot. But there's another one that I really liked. It said, Italian was to English what a quiet woodland brook was to the sound of a busy city street. Happy, natural, compared to willfully amalgamated. That's cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that just comes out. I don't. I used to write poetry way back,
Ah,
so that was my earliest writing, poetry, and some of it was good, some of it was just adolescent crap. But then as I continued writing it over the years, it became more influenced by you know poets that I liked in particular, and just life got more complicated, and my way of dealing with it and abstracting it became more complicated. So every once in a while I'll throw something like that in to it seems like a better description.
yeah.
If you and it's I think that's a really good description. I think that the difference between listening to Italian and listening to English.
Oh,
There's
no
another one
question.
in there where I do where I make a comparison. What was it? I can't even remember what I wrote.
Mm.
Um, but it was similar to that. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
similar
And that
comparison.
kind of rings very true because you have, I don't want to say a poetic justice kind of, but a poetic cadence through some of your writing. It reads aloud very, very well. In case you're aware of that, I'm sure, because you've done readings. But that's not true with. I mean, there's some books you cannot read aloud. You have to read to yourself in order to, because they're so stodgy. But yours
Yeah,
flows. Yeah.
yeah. I like to think of it as the antithesis of James Michener.
Oh, okay, Mitchner fans. I didn't say that. Uh, just checking, just in case.
Well,
Um,
I mean, let's be real. Nobody
yeah.
reads Michener for the prose. They read it because of the locations, because of the excitement and because of the descriptive stuff. I mean,
Yes.
he
Exactly.
describes everything to the infinite smallest detail, and if you like that kind of stuff, you're in hog heaven, I guess. But it's not poetry. It's certainly
No.
not flowing prose.
No.
It is what it is.
Well, I was intrigued when I picked up Hawaii, and he starts with 16 million years ago, and the volcanoes spoke up. Okay, that's heavy duty context. It is. It is indeed. Um, you also have, how shall I say it, a real affinity for the way people ask questions, and I guess it's part of your dialogue thing. But you do not sound like it's an inquisitor in a room with a metal table and their hands cuffed to the table. You have people. You have this really natural flow. Again, this is the poetic side of you coming out, and I'm sure that's unconscious, or is it conscious?
Oh, it's unconscious. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way I write.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about writing it that way. It's just, well, except like a turn of a phrase. Sometimes I'll look at it and I kind of process it the way I would if I were writing a poem,
Mm-hmm.
just because it's. But I don't. But most of the writing, 99% of the writing is just how it comes out.
Yeah. I have
And
to ask, switching topics as I do, bouncing around. I have to ask about guns. You do one section where you talk about guns very knowledgeably. I had to look up the stuff because I'm not knowledgeable in that, and it rings true. And you have to do that if you're writing anything about guns anywhere, because there are people who are experts and do that. So the question is, are you knowledgeable, or did you have to dig all this stuff up?
yes and no.
Uh-huh.
I am fairly knowledgeable. I was in the military, and I've had access to guns all my life, and
Mm-hmm.
I was never an aficionado. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of what I wrote, I had to look up and
Mm-hmm.
research it, and then use that information. But um, so I'm gun knowledgeable, and I have a respect for the sports and the use of firearms and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that much is true. Um, I will tell you this: if you read books and they're using the characters are using guns for whatever reason, sometimes they make some terrible mistakes. I mean, things that are not real, and then immediately it's like reading anything. As soon as
Yeah,
you stumble across something like that, then it's kind of spoiled.
yeah.
So that's why I try to do that kind of research to make sure I'm not saying something that's stupid. You could know a little bit and think you know a lot, and then you try to write about it without looking something up. I think is a big mistake. Yeah.
Which that just leads me to another question, because you were going to get, if you write the wrong thing about, you will get feedback, no question about that. The question is,
Mhm.
how's the feedback you've been getting on the first two books? Have you been getting fan mail and people been asking about certain aspects and stuff?
Uh, Nothing negative. I haven't gotten
Yeah.
anything negative yet. If that's what you would.
No, no, I
I've
was, I
gotten
was,
some.
I was looking at people that
You mean
when
have
I
I got?
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm going to say it again, please. No, you no, finish your sentence. I didn't understand what you were saying.
What I was trying to get at is, have they ever asked you about plot points or suggested that perhaps you do this for the next novel or anything like that, which shows the engagement? I guess is what I was asking. Yeah,
Yeah, a couple of times. Yeah, a couple of times.
yeah.
But for example, and I believe I mentioned this before, but when TB has his what are now referred to as Etsy's,
It is peace. Yes.
Yeah. When he has those sort of encounters with the subconscious, um, I have had a couple of people say that that isn't. I had one critic. I think I mentioned this before to you.
Mhm.
I had one critic who couldn't understand why I was doing that and thought that it was a distraction. And I've had other people say that it doesn't seem like what he comes up with makes any sense, in terms of giving him clues as he's expecting clues to be given. So that's been criticized before. Uh, I had somebody tell me that there was two. How did that go? And they were always drinking wine. Everybody was drinking wine all the time, and I think that was in the first one. And then I explained, well, it's a book,
Yeah.
and so you have to consider the plot line. There's 2 or 3 days between the time they're drinking wine, and they're only drinking wine for a few minutes, so it's really more natural than it would seem. If I
It's
didn't do it, it would be unnatural.
yeah. What's interesting to me is, again, that's one of the categories. You mentioned a couple of the TB only drinks wine. And in the course of the book, because I counted them up, you got Sauvignon Blanc, a California Cab, Sonoma Pinot, Valpolicella, Pinot light in color but satisfying on the palate. So I'm assuming it's a Grigio, but you also mentioned the Grigio. So that was not excessive, I don't think, but it's intriguing to see which varieties you chose. And I'm wondering if all of those are your favorites or just ones you think fit the plot.
Both.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I prefer red wine over white. In fact, I think I mentioned that at one point in this novel. Tony Adamo is serving white wine because it's a midday
Mm-hmm.
meal and they're eating crab, I believe, and so he picks a wine that would fit with that kind of a meal.
Mm-hmm.
And he apologized ahead of time because it's not a red wine,
Yes,
but he said,
exactly.
he says, but for a white wine, it's really pretty good.
Yeah,
You know, and,
it is that way. And again,
yeah.
that leads me to your food, which I should say this is an area where you are like Louise Penny. She always has great descriptions of food. I want to read a couple that you did here because that made me hungry just reading this thing. An amazing, in fact, this is the one: the amazing crab and pasta salad, replete with red and yellow peppers, tomatoes, red onions, olives, diced broccoli, and some kind of cheesy dressing that really brought out the mix of flavor. And you added this: I hated creamy dressings that smothered the other taste, but this one definitely did not. I slipped a nicely sharp Pinot Grigio and then a bite of the recently baked bread. Ah, Connie was an artist. Connie, of course, being the aunt of her. Yeah. That, again, I'm starting to salivate even thinking about that right now, which is a sign that you've got your hands on the throttle and you're pushing it ever so gently. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. That's yeah. There are, you know, how many novels have you read? Good, good writers, good novels,
Mm-hmm.
and they tackle something that is intended to be almost sensory.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be food, but something that's like that. Um, and it just doesn't come off. I mean,
Yeah.
it just doesn't work. And again, I think the idea of keeping it simple. Now that may sound like a complicated meal, but it's not. I mean, just
Yeah.
count the ingredients. It's like a salad. It's just a salad with some crab, and I'm sure you've had something similar to that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly that. And that's just a wine that would go well with a salad like that. I mean, it's just
And the
if you
bread too. Yeah, you have to have the
and
bread
oh
in
yeah,
it. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
So
yeah.
it's
Um,
just stuff that I like, stuff that other people have liked, and I try to. And if I'm going to have a situation like that, then why not make it realistic?
it occurs to me to ask this weird off the wall question: is after the time you write one of those, you go out and make that because you're now hungry for it because you've written it?
Now, now that's going to be in the back of my head every time.
Is that it?
Well, actually, no, because most of my writing I do. This will make me sound like I'm a real German, but I have a schedule for writing,
Ah,
and I sit down, and it's in the morning. It's always in the morning. I
mhm.
rarely write any other time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'll be a longer time, but sometimes shorter. Um, but always, in the morning. Once in a great while, something will come to me out of the blue, and I'll go up and I I have what I you know impishly I call it my library. It's just a small room where I keep books. But anyway, that's where I write, and I go up there and I fire up my computer and type in a sentence or two. But that is rare. I mean, I can count the number of times I've done that on one hand. So
Okay. Do
so
you?
typically I write in the morning. Now,
Yeah.
if you can imagine eating a crab salad and continue uh, it, at usually about 8:30 in the morning, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's probably not going to happen.
Okay. Just had to ask that because it just flitted across my mind, and I didn't want to lose it while I had you there for that. Do you keep
I may have to do it now. Actually,
yeah, do you do you keep a notebook by your bed and wake up in the middle of the night and scribble things on it? Some of the authors I talk to do.
I haven't yet.
Okay.
Maybe I will someday, but
Yeah.
I don't know. No.
Yeah. What what haven't we talked about that we want to talk about the latest book here, The Phantom Grasp?
Uh, well, the Phantom Grasp is an extension of the first two. Um, it could be a standalone novel.
Mm-hmm.
It reads well enough, and I think it's complicated enough, and yet simple enough, understandable enough that it could be a standalone. You don't. There are references to occurrences in the other two novels, um, but the relationship between TB and Lucia, and the mystery that involves a little bit of espionage, a little bit of even geopolitics
Mm-hmm.
and some spy work, and there are a lot of different influences. And I think that there's something, even people that are gun aficionados, they can enjoy it as well. So there
Mm-hmm.
are all sorts of things, all sorts of influences in this novel, more so than the other two, I think. So if you're familiar with the other two, then this one would be a real treat, I suspect. And if you're not familiar with the other two, you can still read it, and maybe you'd be interested in the other two as well. But you could read it as a standalone novel and enjoy it just because of the plot line and whatever. Um, the romantic thread between TB and Lucia uh, is pronounced,
Mm-hmm.
and more so in this novel even than the second one. The second one, it certainly was in a different
Yeah.
kind of way, but
Mm-hmm.
this novel, it is a maturity that goes with it. And I think, and a little bit of an aside, my one of my favorite Hemingway writings is A Movable Feast,
Mm-hmm.
which was autobiographical. It wasn't a novel at all. It
Yeah.
wasn't, a short story. It was novel length, but it was his time in Paris when he was a young man and his first wife Hadley, and what went on, and their first child, well, their only child, and everything that happened in Paris in the 20s. I mean, it was just and I really enjoyed that. Okay. Part of the reason why it was so enjoyable is the relationship between Hadley and Hemingway, and his thinking, his describing it, and that has, I've read that I don't know how many times, over and over again. I always get something out of it, something different out of it. And that was sort of a it it's a way of taking almost a commonplace kind of thing. I mean, men and women together. That's how do you find something new about that?
Yeah.
But it's the way it's described and the way it's understood, and those intimacies made not public but made understandable in a different kind of way.
Mm.
Well, what I tried to do between TB and Lucia is kind of the same thing. They're in their third and fourth year of their relationship, and um, so they've gone through all the surface stuff, and they're now understanding things that they never were concerned about before, because the relationship brings those things out, and they're looking at things in a little bit different way, and they're sharing them in a different way. Okay, so there's a complexity in the relationship that is made known to the reader,
Mhm.
and I think that's something I was trying to do. I don't know, did that come out for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, I want to say, maturing, expanding, growing, getting deeper, more interesting. They're still finding new things about each other as part of the process. I've been married for a long time, and I'm still discovering stuff about my wife almost every day. So, and I'm maybe it goes both ways, but yeah, that felt really real to me. So I didn't ask you this so yet, but is this the end? Is this a trilogy that's self-standing? You're going to switch to do something else, or have you got a long line for TB?
Um, right now, I'm writing a collection of short stories.
Okay.
If you remember, every time I sent my history, anyways,
Mm-hmm.
I'd send the first one off to the publisher, do all that crap, and then when I finished it, when I first sent the manuscript out, I would start whatever I was working on next, and
Mm-hmm.
I started the second novel with TB, and by the time the first one was released, the second one was, with not at the publisher, but was getting close.
Yeah.
And then with the second one, I started on the one that we're currently reviewing.
Uh-huh.
Okay. This time I didn't do that because of the trilogy.
Uh-huh.
And here's how it works in my head. And you can critique it any way you want,
Yeah.
but and the readers can tell me differently. But I initially saw it as a trilogy
Mm-hmm.
before I wrote the first book. I was thinking trilogy. There's so many trilogies that I've read that I really enjoyed, and I just kind of like that whole arc, from
Mm-hmm.
point one to point three. And I don't know. There's something about having a trilogy sitting on your bookshelf, seeing the three of them together, because it digs up so many fond memories when you look at
Oh yeah.
something that you really like. I mean, that sounds superficial, but that's part of what trilogies, the magic of having a trilogy. So anyway, that kind of stuff. Before I wrote the first novel, that was in my head, and then with the second novel, I was on the track of doing that, and with the third one, that would have been the end of the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the end of TB and Lucia and the whole gang? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If enough people are interested in it perpetuating, then I'll be happy to do it, because I like the characters. I don't really want to say goodbye to them. They're like family to me
Yeah.
now. Um, but I want to try something different, and
Mm-hmm.
I started out writing. I was going to write another novel, and I began with it, and I thought, nah, this isn't. This doesn't really have the legs for a novel, and I almost just put it aside and started something else. And then I thought, well, maybe it would be a short story. So I did, and it was. And then I went on to another one, another one, another one. Now
Uh,
I'm maybe halfway through a collection. So
okay. And these are not set in the same universe as TB and
no,
Lucia. Okay.
no, not at all.
Well, it'd be interesting to see where you go from there. Um, if you do write more, I'm going to suggest prequels rather than sequels. You hint at his background is just barely mentioned in this one. That sounds like a character that would be interesting to me as a reader. So just
That's
planting a seed for it.
okay. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Even I mean, I have thought about. I don't know. if you were the one that suggested, tell me if you were, but somebody suggested having a mystery with Joe and Jules,
Mm,
um, because in this current novel, Joe and Jules are together. They were married, I think, in the last novel,
yeah,
and um, they have a relationship. Um, he's a police detective, and she was the secretary in the agency before Lucia came along, and so
yeah,
she understands the business. And she was given an introduction to doing her own investigation in this current novel,
yeah,
the Phantom Grasp,
yeah,
and did well at it. So that might actually that might be something that I would explore
yeah.
as
I
well.
did.
Also, Annie Carolyn. I mean, very interesting character, I think,
Yeah,
and I could see her having her own
yeah.
kind of novel.
Maybe spin-offs is the way you go from here. That's
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
could be.
yeah. So I have to ask this because I always ask this about people who write extended arcs, whether it's a trilogy or beyond. When you started, did you have a last scene in mind from the final book?
No,
Okay.
I knew essentially where it was going to end. I knew it was going to end. I didn't really know that until maybe before I sent the second novel off.
Hmm.
Uh, but I was thinking about ways that I would end the third one at that
Yeah.
point even, and
Okay.
so it was at that juncture. I didn't have I knew the general area that I wanted it to terminate.
Hmm.
Okay, but I didn't really the plot line, all the rest of it. I didn't really know.
Hmm.
The I think I mentioned this before as well, but the characters, um, I let them develop themselves. I know that doesn't make sense, but it is when you develop a character, if you're going to be consistent, the character does things in a particular way because you have a realistic kind of agent, and even though you can write anything you wanted, in order for it to be believable and in order for it to be consistent,
Hmm.
you have limitations, and the more that character is developed, the narrower your trail is.
Hmm.
In order to be consistent. Well, with TB and with Lucia and with everybody that's in the novels, they've gotten to the point now, and maybe that's what you meant about having spin-offs. There are only so many places you can go without being repetitive, and I don't want to get to the point where I'm writing a character that is doing the same things over and over again and just living in an unrealistic world. Ask your question again. I think I got lost there.
Oh, what was my question? I'll have to go back and check it. No. Um,
As bad as
um, okay. Some days are like that for me, as getting up in age as I am. I think we want to wrap this up by making sure that people know where they can get the book, and that would be.
all the usual places: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, wherever you buy your books. That's where you can buy them online. I don't know that they may be in bookstores. I don't really know, but you can certainly buy them online, and you can get them in digital form. And the Phantom Grasp, which is this third novel, you can get it in hardback as well. So it's available in a multitude of places.
Mhm. Have you done audio yet on that?
No, I've been asked if I was interested in that, but so far I haven't. I don't,
Okay. All right. Well, keep that in mind down the road because I think because it reads so well out loud, it would be very good as an audible book. So
I appreciate that comment.
just my thought.
That's
Okay.
I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have enjoyed our time together yet again. Our guest today, the incomparable Dennis Feece. The book is The Phantom Grasp, featuring the equally incomparable T.B. Stone and Lucia. And we are looking for more interesting things from you down the road. So don't you stop writing, my friend.
Okay,
All right.
I'll try not to.
Thank you so much, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Roger. It's been a pleasure.